Welcome. I'm David Skeel, Chairman of the Oversight Board, and I'd like to thank all of you who are present here in person and present online for joining us for this public meeting of the Financial Oversight and Management Board for Puerto Rico, which is being held at the Puerto Rico Convention Center and also being broadcast by video conference. As always, I'd like to ask everybody connected to the video conference to cooperate in conducting a productive meeting, including, most importantly, by keeping yourself on mute during the video conference. And for everybody here in the building, as always, please make sure that you have phones and other devices on silent. To get the meeting going, I'll conduct a roll call to see who is present either here in person or on the video, starting with Dr. Andrew Biggs.
Present.
Judge Arthur Gonzalez.
Present.
Mr. John Nixon.
Present.
Mr. Antonio Medina.
Present.
I think Justin Peterson is not with us today, and Betty Rosa will be joining us by video. I don't think she's here yet. Betty, are you on? Dr. Betty Rosa? We'll mention when she is able to connect. I'm here, and our ex officio member, Governor Pedro Pierluisi.
Present.
And Governor Pierluisi, thanks again for joining us in person. We know that it's a major commitment of time on your part, but very important for Puerto Rico and the people of Puerto Rico. So we have a quorum present, which means that the meeting is an official meeting and we can get underway. Before we do, I'd like to ask Mr. Jaime El Khoury, if you will, as usual, serve as our secretary.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jaime. And once again, thanks to everybody who is attending both in person and the folks who are attending by live stream on the board's website, which is www.oversightboard.pr.gov. As usual, the webcast is available both in English and in Spanish, and also in sign language. If you get on through the English language website, you'll get an English version of this meeting. If you visit the Spanish website, you'll hear the simultaneous translation. As usual, we'll be taking questions and comments. And the way we'll do the questions and comments, once again, is for folks who have made comments online, who are not here in person but have submitted comments online. We will answer those on our website, and the way you make a comment is you complete the form online. It's a simple form to fill out, and we will take any comments that we receive up until 15 minutes before the comment period at the end of the meeting, and once again, those will be answered on the website. Folks who are here in person will have an opportunity to ask questions and make comments in person towards the end of the meeting. And the way it will work, I'll mention this again, is we'll have a staff member with a microphone who will come up to you to give you the microphone, and you have up to 2 minutes for comments. And since this meeting is about budgets and the certification of budgets, we would ask that the comments relate to that set of topics in particular. I'd like to recognize the presence of several members of the FOMB team who are with us. The Executive Director, Omar Marrero, is here. Thanks for coming, Omar. The Deputy Executive Director, Julian Bain, is here, and the General Counsel, Carlos Saavedra, is here. We thank you all for coming. The budgets, obviously, are one of the most important things that we all do in the year, so it is a real show of commitment for you all to take out the time and join us in person. And I'd like to start along those lines by recognizing the Governor and the Secretary of the Treasury, recognizing the fact that they've now successfully completed the 2008 audited financial report. as of, I believe, yesterday. As we all know, the issuance of audited financial statements is absolutely crucial both to what PROMESA calls for from us and for Puerto Rico in general. It's an essential step towards achieving fiscal sustainability and access to the capital markets. And we continue to be committed to working with the government to get those audited financial statements up to date. So we're up to 2018 now, and hopefully we will have 2019 and 2020 in the not distant future. The agenda for the meeting, as I mentioned, it's primarily the core of the meeting is going to be about budgets and certified fiscal budget, for certified budgets. We have 6 items on the agenda. We'll start out by approving minutes. And then second, we'll take up the usual administrative matters. Third, we'll have an update from the executive director. Fourth, we'll have the certified budget presentations. Then we'll have the public comment period, and then we'll have any other matters that we need to discuss. So starting out with the approval of the minutes. That's our first order of business. We need to approve the minutes of the last public meeting, which was held right here on May 27, 2021. We also have a series of executive session minutes that we need to approve. The executive sessions were May 26, June 4, June 11, June 25, June 29, and yesterday, June 30th. Are there any questions about any of those minutes or comments? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to approve them?
Mr. Chair, I move the minutes of the board's public meeting held on May 27, 2021, attached as Appendix A, and the minutes of the executive sessions held on May 26, June 4th, June 11th, June 25th, June 29th, and June 30th, attached as Appendix B in the form presented to the meeting.
Thank you, John. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Arthur. I will, per usual, ask for a voice vote. I'll first ask for all voting in favor, then ask for any opposed, then ask for any abstention. So all in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. The second item is administrative matters. We need to handle a resolution on executive sessions. Would anybody like to present that resolution?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make the following motion. Between the adjournment of this meeting and the opening of the board's next public meeting, the board may consider in executive session any and all matters that it is authorized to consider under PROMESA, including first, any certification determinations authorized by PROMESA, including certifications under Section 206 of PROMESA. Second, any submissions or authorizations authorized by PROMESA. And third, any filings authorized under Title III of PROMESA in each case that are set forth as part of the vote to convene such executive session. The board may also act by unanimous written consent between meetings in accordance with the bylaws, with such consent to include consent by electronic transmission.
Thank you, Andrew. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Antonio. Once again, I'll ask for a voice vote. Would all in favor please say yes?
Yes.
Yes. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that motion passes as well, and we now move to the heart of the meeting for this morning, and that begins with an update from our Executive Director, Ms. Natalie Jaresko.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today marks a very important milestone for Puerto Rico. It's time for us to review and certify the government's annual budgets. We will be presenting 9 separate budgets that were certified. These budgets represent the government's spending priorities for the next 12 months in conformance with their respective fiscal plans. These budgets are also far more transparent than those produced before PROMESA, and they continue the trend of laying out all governmental spending comprehensively and in detail. Before we turn to each of the certified budgets and we close the books on this fiscal year, opening the books for the next one, I would like to spend a few minutes highlighting the critical importance this budgeting process has to our path ahead. You turn to the next page. Thank you. This page shows the environment that existed prior to PROMESA. Historically, as the chart on the right shows, the government's spending, represented as the blue bars, greatly exceeded recurring revenues, represented as the red line. The budgets were not balanced. This caused the government to scrape together other sources of funds, including borrowing from the capital markets, to pay for its expenses. Ultimately, these recurring deficits, as shown in the chart on the bottom right, caused the government to both deplete its bank accounts, stop funding other critical expenses like pensions, and it ultimately led to dangerously low liquidity levels that impaired strategic decision-making. There was no multi-year coordinated strategy to restore growth and opportunity. And this leads to one of the main points that I'd like to convey. Budgets are the main tool to manage spending levels, to plan for future investments, and to implement the government's priorities. Budgets, when aligned with a multi-year financial plan, like the one certified earlier this year, provide a method to achieve fiscal responsibility and long-term growth. When done properly, budgets allow for transparency and accountability for the public to understand how their taxes are being spent. I want to acknowledge the significant collaboration with the government, both the executive and legislative branches, that went into developing a general fund budget for this year. The general fund budget was, for the first time since PROMESA's enactment, approved by the legislature, signed by the governor, and, as will be presented shortly, we believe is consistent with the Commonwealth Fiscal Plan. Similar to past years, the general fund budget is consolidated with the special revenue and federal fund budgets to make up the Commonwealth's total comprehensive certified budget. And that consolidated budget continues the recent trend of budgeting for all spending. In some instances, what looks like an increase in governmental spending is simply spending that was already occurring, not included in a budget, but now being done transparently in the public eye and with reporting and limitations. As shown on the right side of the page, there are also several key principles that were adhered to in the adoption of the budgets. And these include carefully developing revenue forecasts based on consensus to avoid overestimation, spending that incorporates feedback from stakeholders, expenses detailed at a level that enables sufficient control and accounting of all costs, and frequent reporting on how actual spending compares to budgeted amounts. And finally, roles and responsibilities that are clearly defined on enforcement and reporting of the budget. Although we will present each component of the budgets to you shortly, this is a high-level visual of total governmental spending for the next fiscal year. Fiscal year 22 total public spending includes the central government, federal funds, instrumentalities like PREPA, PRASA, HTA, and it totals approximately $27 billion, meeting the priorities and principles needed for long-term stability, growth, and investment. As you see on the right side here, the general fund budget of the Commonwealth government is $10.1 billion, which is the budget approved by the legislature and signed by the governor. It provides considerable funding for critical areas such as health, education, public safety, and economic development. The revised budgeting process under PROMESA sets a foundation for investment, growth, and opportunity. Fiscal accountability and transparency are two key areas where considerable progress has been made under PROMESA. As we look at some of the key reforms, it becomes clear PROMESA instilled, for the first time perhaps, new fiscal discipline from a strategic planning process. Prior to PROMESA, multi-year plans were not consistent with fiscal priorities, and the overall strategy was not aligned with fiscal policies that may have been in place. The budget process now includes all spending, not just a portion of it. Not only is there greater detail and more control language, but it strengthens accountability and transparency. Revenue forecasts have now improved. The forecasts are based on key macroeconomic indicators to prevent overestimation, and there is an enhanced focus on collections and additional revenue opportunities. The past practice of over-forecasting revenues and use of one-time sources to fund recurring budget shortfalls has come to an end. There is now considerable emphasis on being more thoughtful and deliberate on spending priorities with a focus on essential public services, retirees, and economic development. And finally, financial reporting on financial and operational metrics has brought a new level of trust and transparency into the budget and planning processes. Consider for a moment how far we've come and how much this process has improved. You don't have to be able to read the page to see the difference. It shows how a sample agency budget on the far left, in the pre-Promesa world, looked. The legislature approved a budget for this agency that had 2 lines, payroll and operating expenses. The budget was also split between 2 completely different resolutions, making it difficult to understand the consolidated spending of any agency. And now consider for a moment, while there are more details on the agency's budget that may have been disclosed previously in a budget hearing or elsewhere, the main document that drove the fiscal priorities for the government, for this agency, was 2 lines. The middle column shows how the general fund budget for the same agency being presented to you today. This is the general fund budget allocation passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. It still provides considerable flexibility for the government to allocate spending to priorities within the agency, but it also provides the public and the government with much more visibility and control. And then as you see on the far right-hand side, this year's budget continues the trend to budget all and every spending, even those that were not previously budgeted. And like I mentioned earlier, in some instances, where it may look to outsiders like spending has increased year to year, in reality, the budget is just more transparent and showing all governmental expenditures. While ensuring accurate and transparent budgets are certified is important, the budget management process does not end today. It only begins today. It's just as critical to monitor expenditures throughout the year to maintain a balanced budget. A more comprehensive monitoring process has been put in place, focusing on areas including reporting, reapportionments, and compliance with fiscal control. More accurate and consistent reporting improves the ability to manage your spending levels, and the government is now producing more than 30 reports in areas including budget performance, bank accounts, employee costs, as well as implementation of measures. And that visibility, combined with a thorough process to evaluate budget changes, ensures that sufficient funding sources are available to support adjustments that need to be made in operating needs throughout the year. The process also becomes more transparent as these changes are often reviewed in public meetings. With the first of 4 balanced budgets on the horizon, the next 4 years will be about permanently embedding and ingraining fiscal management in the budgeting culture and process within government. Even though significant improvements have been made to the budget process, further progress towards fiscal responsibility is still required. Over the next 4 years, we'll work with the government together to focus on, first, operationalizing the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, which will be the office that spearheads government-wide financial reforms. Second, implementing a civil service reform to be more strategic around planning, recruiting, developing, and retaining the workforce. Third, implementing an ERP system to establish a more accurate, efficient, and consistent financial reporting tool. Fourth, continuing to evaluate the true funding needs of the agencies while holding agencies accountable to providing adequate services in an efficient manner. And fifth, continuing to improve transparency and accountability by publishing audited financial statements on a best practices basis and complying with reporting requirements. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Natalie. In just a minute, we'll begin the presentation of each of the certified budgets, but in my rush to get to the heart of our discussion today, which is those budgets, I skipped over an administrative matter, which is we need to have a motion to approve all of the unanimous written consents that were adopted by the board since the last public meeting. So can somebody make a motion along those lines?
Mr. Chairman, I move to confirm and approve the unanimous written consents adopted by the board since the adjournment of the board's last public meeting, which are listed in Appendix C here too.
Thank you,
I'll
John.
second the motion.
Thank you, Arthur. As usual, a voice vote. Would all in favor please say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes, and we're back on schedule. So we will go through each of the certified budgets, starting with the Commonwealth, then PRIDCO, then PREPA, then PRASA, then HTA, then UPR, then COSEC, and finally COFINA. So starting with the Commonwealth budget, that will be presented by Ginorli Maldonado, who is our Director of Commonwealth Fiscal Plan and Budget. Thank you, Ginorli.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, board members, Governor Pierluisi, Executive Director Jaresco, and those listening via webcam. The fiscal year 22 certified budget, as enacted by the legislature and signed into law by the governor, is compliant with the certified 2021 fiscal plan with the following corrections. First, certain math errors in the revised proposed budget resolution enacted by the legislature and signed by the governor. 2, Section 14 of the budget control language, last paragraph, the funds from the utility reserve, it should read the funds from the reserve for pension obligation and PREPA employees. Section 17G, the fundamental purpose of the conditional appropriations is to incentivize the municipalities to work together to consolidate operations and services to generate savings from shared services, improve services, and increase sustainability of municipal operations. The milestones and standards the Oversight Board creates and enforces will focus on achieving that fundamental purpose of consolidating municipal operations. Section 24, for the avoidance of doubt, PROMESA establishes and controls the scope of the authority of the Oversight Board. Nothing in the budget resolution shall limit or otherwise constrain the Oversight Board's authority under PROMESA. Now, the fiscal year 2022 budget prioritizes funding for critical services such as education, health, public safety, economic development. In addition, it provides funding for important social services, such as fighting gender violence, ending child poverty, and for hiring additional social workers. Adequate funding to meet the governor's and individual agencies' requests for key initiatives, such as civil service reform, parametric insurance, and much-needed road repair have been included. Please turn to the next page. The total central government spending for fiscal year 22 is $21.4 billion. This consists of the general fund, which represents almost half of the budget, as well as the special revenue fund and federal fund budgets. We will be providing more details on these categories in the following slides, but this is a high-level view of the central government spending. In addition, there is approximately $12 billion of federal stimulus related to COVID relief available to the Commonwealth in fiscal year 22, and disaster recovery funds like FEMA, CDBG-DR, etc., expected to be disbursed by the Commonwealth in fiscal year 22. The certified fiscal year 22 consolidated budget provides adequate funding for critical government services, including $4 billion for healthcare services, $3.9 billion to support education needs, $2.6 billion for pension impacting retirees, $2.6 billion to support vulnerable families and children, $1.6 billion to subsidize housing needs, and almost $1 billion for public safety. The total central government spending for fiscal year 22 is $21.4 billion. The general fund represents almost half of the budget, as well as the special revenue funds and the federal funds. You can go to the next page. In addition to budgeted federal funds, almost $20 billion of federal stimulus funds that further supports economic recovery and health and wellness of the island. These funds include relief to individuals, businesses, and the Puerto Rican government that will supplement and further support Puerto Rico's response to the COVID pandemic and aid its recovery efforts. For example, the Department of Education has access to over $9 billion of funding between state funds, ongoing operational federal funds, COVID relief funds, and FEMA disaster-related funds. The opportunity to rebuild, recover, and restore the island's education system has never been greater. However, to effectively utilize these federal stimulus funds, the Department of Education must strategically develop and implement compliance spending plans. In fiscal year 22, the municipalities could have access to almost $1.7 billion of funding from various sources. The certified budget includes $88 million to be allocated to the various municipalities through the Municipal Equalization Fund, $22 million municipal consolidation incentive that can be earned by the municipalities. There is an incremental $38 million of fiscal year 2021 funding that is being extended and will be available to municipalities in fiscal year 22 related to school maintenance, road repairs, and the municipal consolidation incentive. In addition to these $148 million in funds budgeted and available in fiscal year 22, municipalities will also have $1.5 billion available from the federal ARP Act to support their economic recovery. Of course, the municipalities also have access to a significant amount of FEMA and CDBG-DR funding to rebuild after Hurricane Maria and the earthquakes. Ensuring enough funding is available to support the Commonwealth's capital needs is important, and so the certified fiscal year 22 budget allocates $467 million for that purpose. The great majority of these budgeted appropriations are allocated for specific needs at specific agencies. However, an unallocated amount of $33 million also remains for needs identified during the course of the fiscal year. In addition to the budgeted $467 million, there are over $600 million of unspent capital expenditure appropriations from the 2021 budget that ended yesterday. These appropriations are being extended into fiscal year 22, bringing the total amount available for capital expenditures to over $1 billion. The primary categories of spend include construction and infrastructure, vehicles, technology, and equipment. In conclusion, the certified Commonwealth budget for fiscal year 22 provides adequate funding to support key priorities while contributing to Puerto Rico's recovery, stability, and ultimately economic growth. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my presentation on the fiscal year 22 budget.
Thank you, Ginorli. For the most part, we'll wait until the end of all of the presentations to have any comments from within the board, but I will stop here for a minute since this is the biggest and budget and the one that folks have focused on the most. Does anybody have any comments or before we move on to the additional budgets? Governor, did you?
Well, I'll be brief because, as you said, this is the main budget. And my comments generally relate or will relate to all the budgets that the board is about to certify today. This is an important step that the board is taking in the process of implementing PROMESA and working towards its goals. This is the first time that a budget that has been approved by the Puerto Rico legislature and signed by the governor is blessed by the board. And we should all keep in mind that when PROMESA was enacted, the intent was to have the kind of collaborative process that has resulted in this decision that the board is about to make. I, for one, when I proposed a budget at the beginning of this process, I requested a bigger budget. And some of the initiatives and needs that I addressed then are not covered by this budget. but in the spirit of collaboration and reaching a consensus, I compromised in good faith. The same applies to the legislature. I cannot speak on behalf of the Puerto Rico legislature, but I can comment on what the legislature did, and it's very similar to what I went through. And so this is going to happen. I look forward to the day when Puerto Rico regains adequate access to the capital markets and the board finishes its business and the elected officials of Puerto Rico regain the power that they should have. After all, this is a democracy, and we have all been democratically elected. When I say we, I'm talking about the legislators and myself. The same applies to our mayors. So let's not lose sight of the forest from the trees. The goal is to put Puerto Rico's fiscal house in order, to assist Puerto Rico in regaining access to the capital markets, and then parting course. And so we are fast approaching that day. The plan of adjustment that the board proposed to the court, I have taken objection to the pension cuts proposed by the board, but other than that, I am fully supportive. And once the court confirms a plan of adjustment, Puerto Rico will be in a position to regain access to the capital markets. And having this budget in place, which is a balanced budget, also serves an important purpose in complying with PROMESA. Lastly, I'll say that even though I signed the budget, I do anticipate that I will be coming back to the board to request reprogramming in multiple areas. I am not going to deal with it at this point, but as the board knows, I am fully convinced that Congress will provide Puerto Rico a substantial amount of federal funding for our Medicaid program that is not included or contemplated in this budget. And when that happens, which I am pretty sure it will, I'll come back to the board because there are needs that haven't been taken care of in this budget that we will be able to take care once Congress provides the funding that the American citizens of Puerto Rico deserve for their health and their well-being. So having said that, I thank the board. I thank the board. I thank the Puerto Rico legislature. I thank the team at the executive branch. And I'll be here till the end of the hearing. If need be, I'll make some other comments, but hopefully I will not have to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Governor. Does anybody else?
Yes,
Antonio,
Mr. Chairman.
say a word?
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. First, I really want to stress the importance of what has been achieved today. And I will echo, in a way, the words of the governor. But after 5 years since the enactment of PROMESA, we're certifying a budget that was prepared between the House and the Senate and approved by the governor. That did take a lot of work. It did take a lot of meetings, and it did take some flexibility from all the different parts, especially in today's environment where we have a very diverse group of people in the House and the Senate. Therefore, I really want to stress and congratulate our elected officials for delivering to us a document that becomes, for the first time, a certified budget that is agreed upon by all parts of government. Not only is the importance that it's a certified budget, but this budget has very significant flexibility in spending for areas like education, health, and economic development. And I do want to really stress again the fact that our education really needs to be transformed. We have the right amount of money in our budget between local and federal funds to transform the education for our children. And that needs to be a priority, both from the pre-K to high school level, as well as the university level. And I also believe that working together with the governor, we were able to achieve at least the short-term filling of the gap for the university. I do know that many people do not like the fact that we have a board, and as a Puerto Rican, I understand it, and I agree with that. Today marks the beginning of the transition for the board to complete its purpose. We need 4 balanced budgets. With the certification of today's budget, and assuming that we can complete the renegotiation of the debts and go back to, or come out of bankruptcy, within this budget, we have the possibility to be able to have a certified balanced budget as is required by PROMESA, the first of 4 required for the end of the board. That should lead us to be able to return to the markets. And with 4 balanced budgets and access to the markets, we can then end the Fiscal Control Board and come back to a normal operating business. So our goal, our objective in this board is to go through that process and bankruptcy within the next 12 to 18 months and work together with the administration to ensure that within the next 4 years, we have compliant, balanced budgets such that the Oversight Board can finish its work. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. Any other comments for now? Thank you, Governor and Antonio, and I just want to reiterate their congratulations to the Governor and the legislature, and I guess to some extent to us, that we were able to collaborate on a budget that we did together. That can't always happen. It hasn't happened before, but it happened this year, which is really an important step. So we'll do the rest of the the budget presentations, and I won't stop. We'll go through each of them, and then at the end, if there are any additional comments, we'll have time for additional comments from the board, and then we'll have our public comment period. So the next certified budget presentation is PRIDCO, and that'll once again be Janorli Maldonado.
Thank you. Good morning again. Today, we present the fiscal year 22 certified budget for the Puerto Rico Industrial Development Company, better known as PRIDCO. PRIDCO is the largest industrial real estate owner, generating over $50 million in annual recurring lease to income. The real estate portfolio is used to foster economic development by attracting investment and job creation in a variety of industries, including manufacturing, IT, and life sciences. On May 27, 2021, the Oversight Board certified PRIDCO's second fiscal plan, and today, the second annual budget for fiscal year 22. In alignment with the fiscal plan, the fiscal year 22 budget will enable PRIDCO to improve their property management operations through the implementation of the following initiatives: identify strategies to drive increased occupancy, develop a plan for disrepair, neglected, and damaged assets, update the current rental rate card, establish a long-term capital expenditure funding plan, among others. In addition to the resources budgeted in fiscal year 22, PRIDCO will have access to $11 million of capital expenditure appropriations that are extended from fiscal year 21 budget as part of a CapEx reserve, making a total of $15 million of capital expenditure funds available pending the completion of a capital expenditure reserve study. This study will aid in addressing the historic deferral of building repairs and maintenance that has negatively impacted PRITCO's ability to sustain occupancy and has led to a sharp decline in revenues. We strongly believe the fiscal year 22 certified budget represents an immediate opportunity for PRITCO's management to significantly improve the portfolio's overall performance through targeted initiatives that can kickstart medium and long-term revenue growth, aiding in PRITCO's overarching economic development goals. Thank you. This concludes the presentation of the fiscal year 22 certified PRITCO budget.
Thank you, Denorly. The next budget...
Mr. Chairman? Just briefly, I would like to, for the record, abstain from voting on the PRITCO budget. As you all may know, I'm the former executive director of PRITCO, and therefore I need to abstain from certifying that budget.
Okay, thank you. That's noted in our records. Thank you, Antonio. The next budget presentation is for PREPA, and that presentation will be made by Alejandro Figueroa, who is our Director of Infrastructure. Welcome, Alejandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning to Chairman Skeel, board members, Governor Pierluisi, Executive Director Jaresco, and members of the public. PREPA's certified fiscal year 22 budget marks another pivotal step in the transformation of Puerto Rico's energy sector, reflecting the unbundling of PREPA's operations into separate areas. GridCo, managed by LUMA, GenCo, encompassing PREPA's remaining generation assets, and HoldCo, which serves as the owner on behalf of the Commonwealth of the energy system and provides certain centralized administrative services to GenCo. The certified fiscal year 2022 budget projects a surplus of $6.4 million, driven by higher consolidated revenues resulting from improved economic activity and savings associated with improved operational efficiencies. On the revenue side, the certified fiscal year 22 budget projects $3.1 billion in consolidated revenues, $234 million higher than the fiscal year 22 projections, driven by higher energy demand, particularly in the commercial and industrial sectors. On the expense side, when compared to fiscal year 21, the proposed budget reflects 5% higher fuel and purchase power costs for a total of $1.9 billion, mainly driven by the price increase seen in diesel, heavy fuel oil, and natural gas markets, with forecasted unit prices increasing by approximately 30% during 2021. This increase is consistent with the global trends as restrictions and other measures taken as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic are loosened and economic activity and consumption picks up again. Total non-labor operational expenses are projected to be $617 million, an increase of $20 million when compared to the fiscal year 21. HoldCo and GenCo non-labor budgets are $86 million and $53 million respectively, while GridCo's non-labor budget is $412 million after accounting for shared services credits for services provided to GenCo and HoldCo. Additionally, the budget establishes $10.3 million as a contingency reserve for expenditures in line with industry best practices. Total labor expenses are projected to be $312 million, $58 million lower than fiscal year 21. HoldCo and GenCo labor budgets are $18 million and $77 million respectively, while GridCo's labor budget is $217 million. With regards to the necessary maintenance expense, the certified budget reflects total appropriations of $230 million, $50 million higher than the fiscal year 21 budget. Of this amount, $106 million is allocated to GenCo, while the remaining $124 million is allocated to GridCo. The amounts allocated for necessary maintenance in the certified budget are above and beyond the more than $14 billion in federal funding allocated to repair and improve Puerto Rico's energy system. All in, PREPA's fiscal year 22 certified budget continues to press forward on the path of transforming and modernizing Puerto Rico's energy system, reflecting a pre-debt service surplus, while also ensuring key priority areas, such as vegetation management, workplace safety, and system maintenance and improvements, are adequately funded. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro. The next certified budget that we'll be presenting is PRASA, and that is once again will be presented by Alejandro Figueroa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. PRASA certified fiscal year 22 budget projects a slight surplus, mainly from the savings associated with the successful execution of key debt transactions in 2019 and 2020, the implementation of gradual and modest rate increases, and the influx of federal funding from FEMA and state revolving funds. Taken together, these achievements have allowed PRASA to stabilize its financial position and shift its focus towards investing in its water system and improving its operational performance. PRASA's certified fiscal year 22 budget projects revenues of $1.03 billion, which is $43 million lower than fiscal year 21, mainly due to lower consumption, itself driven by the declining population and lower demand. The certified budget also reflects the implementation of an annual rate adjustment expected to generate $26 million in additional revenues. Finally, collections are projected at a blended rate of 95%, a conservative yet healthy figure when compared to similar peers in the municipal water sector. On the expense side, fiscal year 22 non-labor costs are projected to be $398 million, consistent with fiscal year 21 projections, and mainly driven by lower electricity costs, offset by slightly higher chemical costs. Payroll and related items for fiscal year 22 are projected to be $60 million. Are projected to be $60 million higher when compared to fiscal year 21. As mentioned before, as a result of having stabilized its financial position, PRASA can now shift its focus towards improving and investing in its system. To that end, the proposed budget provides the necessary funds to ramp up capital improvements to pre-2015 levels by allocating $72 million from operating revenues to be deposited in PRASA's Capital Improvement Fund. These funds will be used to invest in improving PRASA's old and inefficient system. The remainder of PRASA's Capital Improvement Program is projected to be funded with $120 million from U.S. EPA and USDA Rural Development Financing, $205 million in FEMA funds, and $119 million in previous year balances. In summary, PRASA's certified fiscal year 22 budget demonstrates steady progress with its overall fiscal condition, while prioritizing the need to make significant improvements in its capital improvement program and operational performance in order to sustain long-term growth. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro. And one more for Alejandro. The next certified budget to be presented is HTA.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Given Puerto Rico's roads perform poorly compared to most U.S. states, the certified fiscal year 22 budget for HTA prioritizes improving safety, reducing congestion, and achieving a state of good repair for Puerto Rico's highway system. Despite HTA's financial constraints, the proposed budget for HTA the certified budget for HTA reflects continued support for investment in transportation infrastructure, given the importance of a well-maintained and well-performing transportation system in promoting economic development across the island. On the revenue side, the certified budget projects $710 million in consolidated revenues, which is $151 million less than the certified fiscal year 21 budget. This is due primarily to a reduced need for appropriations from the Commonwealth for operating expenditures and the funding of a contingency reserve, which was fully funded in fiscal year 21. On the other hand, toll revenues are projected to be higher than fiscal year 21, mainly due to improvements in traffic expected to continue throughout fiscal year 22. On the expense side, the certified budget includes total operating expenditures of $243 million, $14 million less than the certified fiscal year 21 budget due to the recategorization of HTA's construction payroll and other technical adjustments. The proposed budget also reflects a projected operating deficit of $43 million, which is expected to be funded through $72 million projected surplus in the capital budget. With regards to capital investments, the certified budget allocates $435 million to fund federal, non-federal, and emergency repair programs, and projects and improve the safety and quality of the transportation system in Puerto Rico. The certified budget fully funds HTA's capital improvement plan, as reflected in the certified fiscal plan, and allows HTA to progress towards achieving a state of good repair for its system while funding road resurfacing, bridge repair, highway sound barriers, sidewalks, bicycle paths, toll reliability, and other much-needed safety projects. All in, the HTA certified budget for fiscal year 22 prioritizes addressing the critical state of Puerto Rico's road system to create favorable economic conditions, identifies efficiencies that reduce expenses, and continues to support the proper investment in the transportation structure. This budget marks an important step in moving HTA towards fiscal sustainability and begins the transformation of the island's transportation system. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandro. The next presentation will be on the UPR certified budget, and that will be made by Maria Lopez, who is our Director of COSEC, UPR, and Pensions. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Good morning, board members, Governor Pierluisi, Executive Director Ms. Jaresco, and to those listening via webcam. We present the certified fiscal year 2022 budget for the University of Puerto Rico. The certified fiscal year 22 UPR budget includes $1.5 billion in revenues, including the $94 million allocation authorized by the governor from federal funding, as well as monies allocated to UPR through the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, totaling $353 million. This includes allocations to students of $153 million and institutional funds of $200 million. The certified fiscal year 22 budget reflects strengthened revenue diversification. UPR also projects increases in revenue driven by tuition, dues and charges, federal grants and contracts, revenue from training and technical services provided to the government agencies, as well as revenues from slot machines and campus-generated inflows projected at pre-COVID levels. The certified budget increases the availability of needs-based scholarships to $163 million and ensures all 11 UPR campuses will be maintained. UPR total expenditures consist of $1.55 billion. The certified fiscal year 22 budget continues to invest in academic excellence with an increase in academic payroll of 3%. At the same time, the certified budget continues to reflect non-academic payroll efficiencies that are to be achieved through attrition, reduction in benefits, and medical insurance normalization. The budget goal is to strengthen the academic mission even further and continue the much-needed operational efficiencies, integrating administrative functions of the 11 campuses, eliminating redundancy, complexity, and reducing administrative cost. The certified fiscal year 22 budget reflects a reduction in the pension contribution to $122 million based on the required implementation of full pension reform. Not enacting these measures in full will require incremental investments to fully fund the plan that have not been budgeted. This will be included in more detail in the budget resolution. Even with the historic amounts of COVID relief funding available, UPR continues to operate at a slight deficit post-debt service, which will be funded by the collection of prior year generated revenues from Commonwealth entities. All in, the UPR certified fiscal year 22 budget considers input from UPR Governing Board and its stakeholders. We will continue to engage all UPR stakeholders in our commitment to ensure that academic and student services are expanded, while back office and administration are consolidated and made more efficient. UPR can also apply operational model improvements that have been proven successful as elsewhere to deliver better outcomes from students, faculty, staff, and the broader Puerto Rico community. At the same time, UPR can count on the support of the FOMB to work together on this path forward, fiscal sustainability for both public higher education and Puerto Rico. Thank you, Mr. Sherman.
Thank you, Maria. The next certified budget to
Mr.
be...
Chairman?
Oh, I'm sorry.
If I may
Actually, can you wait till the end? We're going to go through all
Sure,
of them
okay.
and do comments.
Okay, not a
Is that
problem.
Okay. Thanks, Antonio.
Thank you.
The next certified budget to be presented is CRIM. And I'd like to welcome Herman Ojeda, who is our Director of Revenues and Municipal Affairs, to make that presentation. Welcome, Herman.
Morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Municipal Revenue Collection Center, CRIM for its Spanish acronym, plays a vital role of supporting Puerto Rico's 78 municipalities by ensuring an efficient process to collect and distribute property taxes. Since July 2020, CRIM has been working on implementing various revenue-enhancing and operational efficiency measures to improve property tax collections, which will put municipalities on a path to long-term fiscal sustainability. These revenue-enhancing measures are focused on increasing compliance to ensure people pay taxes that are already billed. There is no increase to municipal property taxes foreseen in the certified budget. CRIM's certified fiscal year 22 budget is approximately $30.7 million, which is 2.8% higher than the certified FY21 budget and derives mostly from 5% of property tax collections. The certified fiscal year 22 budget expenditures include key investments in personnel and information technology systems needed to support operational efficiencies and the implementation of the fiscal plan measures. The certified fiscal year 2022 budget includes an additional $221,000 in salary expenses for CRIM to hire more personnel, including appraisers and collectors, to support the implementation of the certified fiscal plan measures. The certified FY22 budget includes approximately $560,000 in incremental funding for software licenses to support the rollout and implementation of new technology systems to achieve operational efficiencies at CRIM. As to CRIM's accounts receivable portfolio, CRIM will collect its accounts receivables for delinquent taxes internally. However, the FY22 certified budget includes $831,000 in professional services that CRIM may use to hire third party to help collect with the collect and the evaluation and sale of the accounts receivable portfolio should CRIM's efforts to collect internally are not successfully completed by September 30, 2022. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Germán. The next certified budget presentation is COSEC, and that will be Maria Lopez once again presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. COSEC certified budget projects revenues of $35.1 million, consisting of $25 million in premiums received from cooperativas and $10.1 million from interest earned in the COSEC Insurance Fund. Total fiscal year 22 expenditures include $7.3 million in payroll and $4.5 million in operational expenditures. The increase in expenditures in fiscal year 22 is mainly due to an increase in interest expense allocated for COSEC as part of upcoming negotiations between solvent and insolvent cooperativas in their P&A efforts. The certified fiscal year 22 budget reduces professional services expenses from $900,000 in fiscal year 21 to $700,000. All projected operating surplus are contributed into the COSEC Insurance Fund. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Maria. And our final budget presentation is COFINA, and that will be back to Germán Ojeda.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. We now turn our attention to the Puerto Rico Sales Tax Financing Corporation, or COFINA by its acronym in Spanish. COFINA is the public corporation that manages the debt service for the sales and use bonds. In fiscal year 21, the COFINA portion of sales and use tax revenues used to service debt was fully collected by October 2020, 4 months after the start of the fiscal year. As for fiscal year 2022, the Commonwealth is forecasting an improvement in sales and use tax collections relative to FY 2021, which supports fully funding the COFINA debt service this fiscal year. The operating expenses of COFINA are mostly funded by interest earned on the bank balances from sales and use tax collections. Therefore, given the low interest rate environment, COFINA is projected to draw on cash on hand to fund operations for fiscal year 2022. This is COFINA's third annual certified budget after COFINA's successful Title III Plan of Adjustment confirmation in the second quarter of fiscal year 2019, which reduced the debt obligation from $18 billion to $12 billion. Similar to fiscal 2021, the certified fiscal year 2022 operating budget reflects COFINA's normalized and recurring operating expenses of $1.4 million. The budget supports limited staff, certain professional services, and other non-personnel expenses required for the COFINA operation. Also, COFINA will continue with the Memorandum of Understanding it maintains with AFAF, which provides low-cost administrative support rather than the hiring of full-time staff. Finally, I want to mention that COFINA's certified fiscal year 2022 budget was prepared using the joint development procedures pursuant to PROMESA Section 202F, similar to the fiscal year 2021 budget. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Herman. That completes the presentation of the certified budgets. We now have some time for any comments or questions from within the board. Antonio, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I would like to go back to the university for just a couple minutes and mention that while we have a certified budget for the university for next year, I really want to remind us all that we only have that budget because we were able to close the gap with the help of the governor with certain federal funds. But this gap grows for next year as for the fiscal plan, and it actually grows to over $120 million for the next fiscal year. I recognize the efforts of the university to achieve the fiscal plan, and I want to personally lead this board with the discussions with the administration of the university and the administration for us to be able to close over next year that gap in the fiscal plan. We need to ensure the quality of our education. We need to ensure that there are no closures of campuses and that we have adequate funds for scholarships, while at the same time strengthening our university through optimized systems and processes, operational efficiencies, increased development or fundraising, enhanced federal grants, and optimized procurement practices. I want to encourage us all to work together for the long-term financial health of our university, as it is the most important institution and the engine of economic development for Puerto Rico. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. John?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add some comments and express my appreciation to the teams that put these budgets together. I've been part of putting dozens of budgets together over the last 25 years and worked with budget teams and budget staff, and it's truly remarkable, the professionals that we have, both with Mr. Omar's office, and sorry, Omar, and the staff on the board. I really appreciate all the hard work and dedication and commitment and the collaboration. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that goes on, and these take hours and hours and hours to put together. And Governor, I appreciate having worked with you and your team and the discussions that we've had. Clearly, there are tough decisions to be made. And there'll be continued to be tough decisions to be made. But I'll tell you, this is a big step for the future of Puerto Rico and the end of the board. And we're all working towards that end. And we just appreciate your vision and leadership in helping us bring this budget together.
Thank you, John. Other questions or comments from the board? I'd just like to second the comments about all of the work that everybody has put into this. I know our team hasn't been sleeping for weeks, although they might not always look like they haven't been sleeping. I suspect that's true in the governor's office as well, and I suspect there's some lights on late at night in the legislator's office as well. So it's been really a Herculean effort, and we should all be pleased with the result, I think, and we just have to make it work over the coming year. So we now have time for public comments. It looks like we have a podium over here to my left, to y'all's right. If anybody would like to make comments, ask questions about the budget process or any of the budgets, please make your way towards the podium. And as I mentioned, all comments that have been posted to our website, we will answer promptly on our website. I don't see any public comments. So not seeing any public comments, I don't believe there are any other matters we need to discuss unless somebody wants to raise them very quickly. And so I'll make the one motion I make in a meeting, and that's the motion to close the meeting. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Arthur. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? Sometimes somebody's going to oppose or abstain, but probably not anytime soon. So our meeting comes to an end. We'll be having a press conference as soon as everybody gets settled after the meeting. Governor?
That's fine.
Go ahead. Or did you want to say anything? Or
No, I'm
Oh,
fine.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry. Thanks again to everybody for coming and for a very productive meeting. And as I said, as soon as we get settled, we'll have a press conference right after the meeting. Thanks to all.